Annelise Nielsen has had a front seat to all things Trump 2.0, from the announcement of his candidacy all the way through to the election, and of course was part of an excellent coverage, if I do say so ourselves, at Sky News from the middle of the night to now the end of the night here. Many hours later. She joins us now from Washington, D.C., where it's just gone 5:30 in the morning, mate. You are the Energizer Bunny. You just keep going. Well done, mate. Congrats to you, the team, and everyone else. Chris as well with this show has been absolutely fabulous, and Tom with all the great details. So I do want to spend much of this conversation looking forward, because we've all done the highlight reel and people who are watching at this time of the night have seen it many times over. But what to you was most striking about being in that arena when there was not just the parade, there was a speech, of course, by the president, much more informal speech to one that he had made at the inaugural, but also those executive orders where that change that people had voted for, am I sort of onto something here, that they wanted it, so he gave it to them, and he gave it to them via a fire hose.
I heard one journalist say that they were drowning in news lines, and I think that is exactly how it's felt. And it's because we've had the water cut off for so long. I mentioned this previously, that news organizations, when the Biden administration came in, they said that there's not going to be news broken on the weekends. So they had just skeleton staff at the White House on the weekends. Now, news will happen when it happens. And Donald Trump had that impromptu press conference last night. This is what people expect from the White House. And for 4 years, they've had this kind of drip feeding of information from an administration that said that they were the most transparent administration in history. Last night, when Donald Trump had his press conference, his press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, was saying, this is what transparency looks like. And that is true. As he was signing the executive orders, he was taking questions from reporters and he was really answering them. And so this is going to be the new normal. There will be news broken when it breaks. This will be reactive. And I'm sure it's not always going to be as amenable as it was yesterday. I'm sure there'll still be tense moments. We saw that in the past. There were times when we saw that apparently Donald Trump ordered every single journalist off the White House campus and his staff had to distract him because they simply can't do that. But what we are seeing is what the American people expected. And Paul, I tell you, for the last 4 years, when I've traveled around America and I tell them what I do, tell people what I do in Washington, D.C., and they want to know all about it, the first question they'll say is, who's actually running the country? From today, everyone knows who's running the country. It's Donald Trump.
And look, again, what was important to see here was that the interaction with the reporters while he was signing stuff, it wasn't sort of a bunch of North Korean reporters which were saying, dear leader, why is everything amazing? Could you please tell us why you're amazing? It wasn't a Russian press conference.
Having their questions vetted.
Yeah, it was, or literally being called out. Remember Biden used to stand there with those cards saying, I've been told I have to ask, and the whole charade that played out over the past 4 years.
And the whole question would be there. Yeah,
I mean, that was the garbage. So again, it is going to be fractious. There are going to be consequences to decisions that are made. There is going to be things. But something that I found interesting about the difference between when he came in the first time and when he comes in now is that built into the coverage, the word chaos, which was all sort of the key word for every decision and every thing like those press conferences. That was built into the narrative of how everyone had to consume the news and that news at all hours of any day. That doesn't exist this time around, does it? Because not only does he know what he's doing, but he's got a professional series of people around him who are his people. He had to compromise with staff at the start, and he was bumping into the furniture. But he's got people around him, including the person who ran his campaign, Susie Wiles, who is an absolute genius at making sure you shut down leaks, keep things focused, and keep things on the message of the day.
Absolutely. I think it was just the sense the first time around that everyone was so shocked they got in there. And I think having 4 years out of the place wasn't necessarily the worst thing for him. Having to fight against all these legal cases, I think has really focused him in on getting back in. But these are serious people he surrounded himself with. And that wasn't the assumption going into this. We've watched him with his appointments for the cabinet secretary positions. The business community is really happy with the people he's put in for, especially those economic portfolios. And at the end of the day, that's what Donald Trump wants. He wants to point at the stock market and say, I did that. And every American, 60% of Americans have at least some kind of investment in the stock market through 401k, retirement savings, or some other investment mechanism. So the stock market does matter. There'll be people that tell you that this is a rich people thing. It's not. It's a really ordinary American thing. But also just having gas prices come down, that is huge. I cannot tell you how many small business owners I've talked to over the last year. And when they all work on small margins and just put their heart and souls into businesses, it'll often be the transportation costs, the thing that kills them. And so to say that we're going to start getting oil drilling back, we're going to get in a position where we're not having Russian oil going through around all these sanctions and actually costing the American taxpayer more at the end of the day. These are all things that are going to make a huge difference. And also just the signaling of Trump coming back in and saying, I care about business, we're doing this. We're going to see more investment coming into America to keep Trump happy. That's a good thing for Americans, and it's a good thing for the economy. It's going to be what changes the tone of everything. Same with immigration. The tone matters, and he's already set that tone.
Well, and I remember I was watching, one of the mini speeches in the middle of the night, and probably on the phone to you, going, "What do you think of this? What do you think of that?" We talked a lot in the past 12 months. My apologies to your wonderful husband.
I always want to know what you think. Yeah.
God love you. Well, is that Trump would make all of these announcements during the campaign, where he would talk about that if you were a company that was operating outside of America and you brought your manufacturing base back to America, your corporate tax rate would be lower than anyone else's corporate tax rate. He said a whole bunch of stuff, but because everyone was focused on, trying to play the outrage playbook of 2020 or following the, he is Hitler garbage that was being rolled out, they weren't paying attention to these announcements. So all of this has been foreshadowed. All of this has been promised. None of this to this point is any sort of a surprise. Yet the images that people will wake up to, and the breakfast TV shows start in about 15 minutes over there, no doubt they will do the first bit about the speech and the second bit about, the Biden pardons, and then they will eventually get around to the consequences of some of those decisions on day one. And people who had been put in jail in relation to what they did, or what the government was able to convince a jury that they did, on January the 6th, those people are going to start to come out of jail. They are coming out of jail as we speak. There are going to be attempts to remove people with criminal records who were in the country illegally, and that's going to be some messy pictures. So you can control things in a speech, you can control things when you're in the Oval Office, but when the pictures are people coming out of prison, or inevitably tears being shed as the person who is being booted out of the country, who should have been booted out of the country, is being booted out of the country, how do you think that plays in the next 24 hours?
There's a reason Trump's doing all this on day one, because he has such goodwill built up at this point. And I don't say that to fangirl. I say that because this is the reality of this election result. The fact he got the popular vote, the electoral college vote, that he won every swing state, that people were so frustrated with Biden having such clear cognitive decline over the last few years and being told that he was fine. The deep distrust in government. Donald Trump is coming in on a high. So he's doing these really unpopular things now, and then he's going to move on, and the headlines will move on. It was really anticipated for anyone who's been paying attention that these January 6 people would get a pardon. He's been saying this for years. He promised his base. He doesn't tend to let his base down on things like that matter. The only thing he's really sidestepped from his original hardline position has been around abortion, and that's because they took so many hits again and again, especially in the midterms. It was just kind of, they had to see the writing on the wall. But this was going to happen. I think when you look at surveys around people's attitudes towards January 6th, the attitudes have still fall on party lines, but the intensity of those feelings has diminished as time goes on. It was a terrible, terrible summer. There were riots in major cities across the country. There was a lot of destruction. And so a lot of people put that part and parcel in it. And for a lot of people, when we're talking about the 1,500 who've been charged in some relation to January 6th, a lot of them, we're talking about commuting sentences, so they still will carry that guilty conviction. Many of them have done time. And so for a lot of people, they'll just say, look, it's time to move on. I think if there's one headline out of it that's going to hurt, it'll be the Proud Boys getting out because people are still spooked by that element. But America does have a big history of this. 320 million people in this country. There are militias across the country. There are stockpiles of guns, and they fight for their Second Amendment right, let me tell you. So it's complicated, but I think in the flurry of news, it will people will move on.
Now, forgive me, I'm going to make you blush, but I want to say something. Sky News has got an incredible presence in the United States. Yes, we've got a lot of YouTube support over there, a lot of people who love the reporting or lefties losing it, lots of great stuff that we do. But years ago, we didn't have an American correspondent. It was Annelise's idea to create it. And one of the reasons why it is so easy to be a person like me when you go to the United States is because of what we have built. And we've built that as a result of Annelise's hard work. And yes, everyone surges in for the grand final, but we have our A game there all day, every day. Congratulations, mate.
Thank you, Paul. And just while you're letting us say nice things, the reality is I'm only here because my dad told me to, and it's actually his birthday today.
Hey, happy
and he's
birthday,
the one 4
Dad.
years ago that said, come on, let's go cover the Iowa caucuses. You can do this. You should be a US correspondent. I'll help you make the pitch. So really, it's my dad. So
Love
happy
you,
birthday, Dad.
Well, I love Mum too, of course. We don't want to upset Mum. We love you too, Mum.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, guys.
Yeah.
We do appreciate it. Thank you, Annelise. Love you, darling.
Thanks,
See you
Paul.
soon. All right, Annelise Nielsen, honestly, she does a phenomenal job in the US for us.